Hi, I'm going to show you how to do exercise 1 called It's Zero, which is part of the session called Test-Driven Development, which is part of the course Programming Formalisms. So there it is, Programming Formalisms, Test-Driven Development, and we'll be talking about how to write this function is zero. And I'll be doing this in an exemplary way, and I'll be just looking around the documentation as I go to show you where you can find things. I do already know what assert is. I already know how to develop a function. Maybe I'll peek at the answer like you maybe would, or Google. Let's see how it goes. So let's take the exercise. So we're going to use Python, so I don't need to do this. This is this video. I do know assert. Let's develop it. Let's take a look. So the function is called is0. It returns true if the input is 0, returns false if the input is not 0, and gives an error when the input is not a number. Sure. So the first thing we need to do is write a test that breaks. For that I need to make a file, so I go to Visual Studio Code, new file. Of course you can use any editor you want, and I will call my file is 0 .py, I guess, and now it's a Python file. I need to store it locally, sure, it's now in my home folder, and now I have a Python file. And to develop, to have a first test that breaks, I'm gonna assert that if I do is 0, that I get documentation, that it has documentation. So let's run this code. So this should break, else I'm not done. Yeah, so here it breaks, it says, hey, is 0 is not defined. That's correct, because I never defined it. So now we're gonna need to define this function. Def is 0, and then don't put anything in. I just make it do pause. I think I can leave this out even, but I do need to write the documentation now somewhere. So this is indented, and it's in double quotes there. Determines if the input, so I guess I need some input. I'm going to put it already here. Input is 0. Yeah, and it's a bit sad that I'm falling with my editor off the window. Determines if the input is 0. Returns, and I just copy paste this. Determines if the input is 0. Returns true if the input is 0. Returns false. And I guess this warning sign must be taken away. Maybe I can do something like this. Yeah, sure. This looks fine to me. Need to make sure at the end there are these triple quotes. There. And now I feel we have a documented function. Of course, you can make this way simpler. I just like to repeat for myself to what this function is going to do before this is English, before I switch to Python. If I run and it passes, I've done it. Yep. So everything works. Well done. So the green phase is now up. We're now in the green phase. It passed. That means we're now in blue. We can now refactor. We can check in our code, or we can rewrite it. I think this is good enough. So we're going to break our code again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assert is 0 of the value 0, and this should be true. So if I do is 0 on the value 0, it should return true. You can simplify this assert statement to this. It's exactly the same. You can pick whatever you're most comfortable with. Like in the beginning, you'll probably do this. The more advanced you are, the more likely you'll be doing this. I'll keep it this because this is aimed at beginners. So here I assume that if I put in a 0, that it will return true. And to make this pass, I broke my code now. And I need to be as lazy as possible to make this pass. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to return true. I don't know, let's see if it works like this. Maybe there's a syntax here. Let's take a look if it works. Yep, so there must be a return here. Let's take a look if this works. Yeah, I just fixed the function. So now if you call is0 with a 0, it returns true. So I just passed the green phase, now I'm in the blue phase. I can refactor now. I think this code is good as it is at the moment. Next step, we need to break it again. We're in the red phase again. So we're going to assert that is 0 on 1, or it can be any number, this number for example, that this returns false. Like also this assertment, assert statement you can rewrite to assert not that, and then remove the equals false. I'm going to keep it like this because a beginner will find this easier to read probably. At least that's how I feel. That what is likely and unlikely. So we agree that the value 23 is not 0, so it should break the code. Let's take a look if I break the code. Yes, correct. The code is broken. And that makes complete sense, because in this function, whatever I put in, it returns a true. Now I'm going to write return input is equal to 0. There are many ways to do this, of course. You can write something like this: if input is equal to 0, return true, else return false. Yeah, you can all do all kind of things like that. That you make it quite explicit that whatever the input is, it should return. On the other hand, this is exactly equivalent to what I put here. So I'm going to use this form. You could argue if it's less or more readable. So it returns the result of the comparison if the input is 0. Let's take a look if I fixed my code now. There, I fixed my code. This means I'm in the blue phase where I can refactor things. I think this is solid, so I'm going to keep it like that. Now we need to give an error when the input is not a number. So that means if I do is 0 on some nonsense, that this must throw an exception. So there must something happening. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to run it and see if that it works. That's bad. I needed to throw an exception. And then it should say that it doesn't throw an exception yet. So for this I'm going to take a look at the answer. There's some scaffolding around it to make it crash. Let's take a look at the answer. I only look at the bottom part there. I don't know what I've written above, I don't care. I'll put the scaffolding here. And it says has thrown is false, so it has not thrown yet, and it tries to run is 0 on nonsense. If it throws an exception, and it should, then has thrown is set to true. And then in the end we assert that has thrown has become true. So also like this, you can write this. Whatever you prefer. Both will work equally fine. So like this test was a big effort, but now I finally broke the code. And now I need to make this come true. So this means that at the start of this function I need to check for the input type. So if, and looking for the type of an input, you need to use instance for this. I'm going to use what is here in the example and paste it there. Let's take a look what it says. If x is not an instance of x, of integer, so if x is not an integer, this should be input, because I'm using the word input here. If our input is not of type integer, then raise a type error, and that text should say input must be of type int. That seems solid to me. Let's run it. Let's see if it now fixed the test. Yes, all tests still pass. So can I break the code again? So let's take a look. Let's say let's write a new test. For example, is 0 of -1. This is not 0. So this passes. So that means I can delete this test. Let's try like 2 integers. If I put in a list of 2 integers like 1 and 4, So these are two integers, so it should return like some versions. If is0 would account for multiple inputs, and then it would be called R zeros. But this function checks if it is 1 0. This is not 1 0. If I put in 0 and 0, it should throw an exception, because this function only can do 1 0. So take a look. Yeah, so this works. So this means we can delete this function because we cannot break our code. We need it to do something wrong, and this works. So whatever I do, I seem to have run out of ideas how to break my own code. This means I'm now done writing the function is0 using test-driven development. Let's take a look at the answer. If there are things that are weird, I'm just going to zoom in on it because I'm done coding now. Is0, it has some kind of shorter documentation here. It checks for the input being int is fine. It uses a longer form, like use an if statement to return true or false. It's equivalent to what I did. It checks if the documentation is there first, which makes sense. I like that. Here it uses the not is0, so they have a different way of writing exactly the same thing. And here we have checking for exceptions being raised. That's exactly what I copy pasted. So with that, I've showed you the answer of exercise 1 is 0 on the session of test-driven development, which is part of the Programming Formalisms course we teach at NBIS and UpMax. With that, I wish you a very good day. Bye!